Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. I have Jess Sloss here of Seed Club. Really excited for this conversation. Jess, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
So we have a lot to get into in a short amount of time, but I think a good starting place is let you talk a little bit about your background and give us an idea of what Seed Club is and what Seed Club's mission is.
Sure. Seed Club is a DAO that builds and invests in communities with tokens. So I think the short hand way of describing it is like Y Combinators, but for community tokens. We help creators and communities explore how to use NFTs, various different crypto assets to help create more value for their communities and for themselves. It's a pretty new concept and a new space, and so I think really we're a learning organization that's designed to bring the smartest people together to try to unlock as much value as we can. My background in the space started in 2017. I was really fascinated with how tokens would allow us to own pieces of the important networks that are coordinating our economy. Had sort of been early into social media, saw the promise of democratized access and distribution, and saw that promise taken away as certain central organizations were able to capture most of that power and value. So crypto really captured my attention for that reason, and had spent a bunch of time in the music business and as an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And so a lot of these sort of things came together to make it really apparent to me that in the summer of last year, we started to see some early tools that would allow people to create these communities with tokens and give people an opportunity to own a piece of them and to have aligned incentives. And it's really been a year of experimenting and pushing that stuff forward in really exciting ways.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really good place to start is if you look at, we'll call it the kind of emerging creator economy, right? Or really the intersection of crypto community and culture with some of these creators. What are some of the issues or potential headwinds that creators face today? Let's say maybe leveraging some of the Web 2 infrastructure or platforms. And how does crypto and eventually kind of community DAOs, how does what you guys are doing kind of solve that issue or allow or empower those creators to take back, control or capture more value that they're creating?
A line we use often is that we think that the value people or communities create online should be captured by individuals and not by platforms. And I think right now, the majority of the economics that are going to people working on these platforms are going to the platforms themselves. So, this term of like digital sharecropping or the sort of feudalism examples, I guess, are pretty relevant, I think, to folks that are operating in the creator economy today. And I use the creator economy very generally. I think it's anybody who's creating value online, leveraging these Web 2 platforms. I know they've done a phenomenal job at creating distribution and reach and being able to get discovered. And so there's a lot of good things that have come out of social media platforms. But the downside is that really the vast majority of this value is going to the people who own the network effects. So, the stockholders in Facebook and in Uber and in Airbnb are really the ones that are profiting off of like the value that individuals are creating on the platforms. So it's not just like ad revenue or value from the data that's being created. It's ultimately like people coming together to use these networks, creating a network effect that is valued by the market and not having any exposure to that. So I think tokens change this drastically. Like they create this sort of meta shelling point above all platforms of which people can sort of identify and represent a shared belief in a creator or in a future or in a business or a network. And that value graph, so the ownership of those tokens are transportable, right? So they can be, we can have our communities in Discord today or, on Facebook, but whatever comes next, those token holders, as long as we're using the tokens as either gated access or sort of representation of a say in a community, can be brought along with them. So I think the core piece here is just value of community or of network being captured by the people who are in that community rather than the platforms.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes you've had is around how tokens can give communities superpowers, right? And I think that's a really good way to think about it. Maybe let's talk through just a handful of those examples of what do those types of superpowers look like?
So the idea of a community having a bank account and having a cap table, having the ability to generate and split revenues automatically, essentially being operated through smart contracts rather than legal contracts. These are all, I think, really big innovations and unlock a lot of value for communities. They're the simplest form of like us coming together with tokens and a multi-sig, I think is pretty transformative. The idea that you could have a small group of people, decide what to do with some capital that exists on the internet without having to have a bank account, without having limitations of jurisdiction or country or age, or I mean, across the board, it's just so much more accessible, assuming you're able to get over the hump of crypto usability, which I think more and more people are. So I think that's one superpower. The ability to have DAO or community assets that live in a treasury that can be used to, reward fans for creating value, I think is huge. Like imagine, like Taylor Swift having her community have a token that could go to people who are creating memes and who are helping to distribute her music. Like, I think it's probably less important for somebody of that size, but more for maybe Taylor Swift when she's on the come up. So this ability to like reward work that's being done in a community with a community token that represents a share of that community. Like an example I give often is the Friends with Benefits community, which is a wonderful token gated access Discord with a couple thousand token holders, 1,000 members. I host a chat there every Thursday afternoon, which I get paid 50 Friends with Benefits tokens for. For the longest time, that was maybe $250. I think as of today, it's about $5,000 a month. And, it's a way of representing, I like to think, maybe it's not true, but I like to think that I had some impact on creating value within that community, and that value is being recognized over the months as, in a token grant, and that token grant gets more valuable as we collectively create more value. So I think that's a pretty transformative piece. But we also see a lot of interesting examples around NFT sales and splits. So a project that we've backed is called Songcamp, and they essentially come together to create music, issue those as NFTs, auction them off, and automatically split the revenues directly between all the people that contributed on that NFT or on that music production. So there's like this speed and immediacy of and transparency that exists, I think, in how capital or money or earnings are transferred between members in the community. And I think these are just like the earliest versions of this. We see composability in crypto being so big in the DeFi space, and I think it's just starting to come to the social crypto space.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we're actually talking with Cooper Turley for this series, as who you know extremely well, and obviously pretty influential within the FWB space. And so going to go through a few examples of exactly what they're building there, how they're coming together, how they're thinking about things like governance. So that's a really good conversation that I suggest people tune into. But to that point, something you were hitting on, this concept of, the relationship, let's say, between NFTs and communities, right? And I'll use community DAOs just as kind of that representation of this. I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you're seeing that relationship develop, or how communities can use things like digital assets in the form of NFTs to bolster communities, to drive value to those communities, but also can use them as things that allow either for access to communities, just ways in which that relationship is starting to break out. Because I think a lot of audience members here will be familiar with NFTs at this point, but some people might not be as deep into the space or have such a deep understanding around community DAOs and that type of structure, and where NFTs kind of fit into all of this.
Yeah, I love the rabbit hole we could go down here. I mean, I think like the big transformative power that NFTs brought, like this latest sort of excitement around NFTs has brought, is the ability for individuals and maybe more importantly, communities to be able to generate on-chain revenue. So we as a community can come together, build, launch a smart contract, launch a PFP project or a series of NFTs, have those NFTs, go up for auction and be sold, and have that revenue, directed to a multi-sig. And if you think about previously, like most of the ways that these communities were able to capitalize themselves was through selling tokens like ERC20s, through token sales. And there's a lot of complications and challenges with that. Selling sort of digital merch to fans as a way of being able to put money into a shared pool or multi-sig, I think is big. And we're seeing like this growth of social DAOs, creator DAOs, I think being born on the back of a lot of this sort of innovation. And so I think there's a number of things you can do with tokens. Tokens can help you generate revenue. They can help gate access to communities. So holding a token, for example, a project that we work on is called Squiggle DAO. To be a part, it's a DAO collector. They are a collector DAO, basically, of a certain type of NFT. To be a part of the DAO, you need to hold one of those NFTs, and that gives you access to the Discord and to drops and to governance and to a whole lot of good things.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.